Greetings and welcome to the second part of my natural bodybuilding tier list, a ranking of 50 things you should be aware of for your natural long-term muscle building journey. It's a beautiful day, sunny and no clouds in sight. Presently flying at several thousand feet above the ground, and we are expecting a smooth flight of around 20 minutes and expect to be on time. We hope you enjoy the journey. And without further ado, let's start with frequency. So, how many times you train per week and how many times you stimulate a muscle group too.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
Well, first of all, frequency needs to be adapted to your needs, level and objectives through your whole journey. As a general rule though, I think it doesn't make much sense for natural lifters to use the bro split because, the first set you perform for any given muscle is the most qualitative one, and then the second one is already a little bit less of a stimulus, and so on and so forth. You get diminishing returns. It's much better to spread all those sets through the week. For example, 3 sets per muscle group close to failure, 3 times a week, will give you 9 sets of high stimulus, high quality. That follows the Pareto principle, which basically states that 80% of your result usually comes from 20% of your effort. The bro split makes more sense for people that take steroids, because what they take just makes them anabolic all the time. But as a natural lifter, you have much more limited access to anabolism. You can only fuel it with limited means, and all else being equal, frequency will help, because you will trigger more muscle protein synthesis overall, and counter the effects of myostatin, the hormone that slowly builds up after your training and limits your muscle growth so that you don't become some kind of blob of muscles unable to move, right? And then to stimulate even further those anabolic effects, you would be better off pushing the most amount of muscle mass as you can. So full body makes the most sense in general, but of course the flip side is that you will need more recovery as well. So, like most variables in fitness, you cannot really isolate your frequency and your splits from many other aspects, your lifestyle, your level, because also all of this is going to evolve naturally through your lifting journey. For instance, typically when you're intermediate, what makes more sense is to switch to an upper-lower split. So you can have both more frequency and volume, but you structure your week so that your joints are not stressed 2 days in a row, basically. But at the end of the day, you can grow from any split, as long as you stick to it. The most important is to find a split and a frequency that just suits you and keeps you engaged and that you can sustain. So yeah, I think I will put it in crucial, meaning 2 things. First, that if you have the time and recovery to do so, it's probably better to train a bit more frequently to maximize your gains, but also crucial in the sense that you need to pay attention to it. Listen to your body and adapt your frequency and your split according to your level, your lifestyle, and your goals. Okay, next we have full range of motion. And yeah, I think this one is very much overrated nowadays. I think this is only one variable among many others. And of course, it makes sense on some lifts and according to specific goals as well. And also there is the question of how do we define full range of motion, because depending on the lift and the joints involved, it could be defined differently from one person to another. When you bench, you could say, yeah, full range is when you touch your chest with the bar. But some people could go deeper than that with dumbbells. And that would be full range of motion, and touching your chest with the bar is like a half rep according to that. So yeah, I think the problem with the obsession with full range of motion is that it ends up being almost a meme. Only full range of motion. Only full range of motion.
Mommy, try to get you!
it's like in everything. If you overdo a good thing, then it becomes a bad thing. If you try to do full range on everything because you believe it's the most hypertrophic way of moving, then you're gonna go into troubles with maybe your shoulder joints because you're gonna try to go always super deep with your presses. Maybe with the squat you will only do like ass to grass, and maybe it doesn't fit your morphology. Depends on which muscle you try to target. You should first of all listen to your body always before you listen to any influencer or any guy on YouTube. When it comes to the full range of motion, you should just feel if it makes sense or not for you, for the specific lift you are doing. When you start to feel that the tension is going away or not. If it becomes your bread and butter of how you define a good technique, then yeah, I don't think it's good.
Train properly, full range of motion.
So I would put it in depends. It can be good or even very good depending on the lift and your morphology. But yeah, it could be bad. Definitely you can get injured if you obsessed too much over it. The next one is gamification. So I guess that one might surprise you. I've never seen that topic being talked about at all. The way I understand it is maybe not like a very formal way of gamifying your training, but I really tend to go to the gym as a kind of RPG game, you know, and I like to see strength and hypertrophy and endurance and power as attributes, like on a Dark Souls game, for instance. And I like to think of it as trying to balance my character build. When I bought my straps, it was a bit like I got some item that is helping me on my quest. This kind of stuff, I don't know, it just comes to me naturally, not all the time, of course, I don't have that always on my mind. But the main idea here is that I kind of picture myself as a character that I try to improve, and there are all those parameters like the gear, knowledge. You know, sometimes in games like Skyrim or Witcher, you just find a book that teaches you a new skill or this kind of stuff. So yeah, it just comes quite naturally to me because I've been playing a lot of video games in my life, a lot of RPGs and adventures and things like that. So many times I'm lifting and I'm thinking of some form of progress or strategy I'm using, and I just remember Pokemon or God of War or yeah, Skyrim and Witcher 3. All of these are like big time favorites of mine. So I think it's very helpful because obviously it keeps you more engaged in your training. In a way, you see yourself as a hero, like in an epic journey. You can see some lifts as a kind of boss, you know, like typically the barbell heavy lifts are a bit like bosses. Yeah, and in my case, I'm even more in this kind of atmosphere that I tend to listen a lot to video game music as well when I'm lifting, so I'm kind of in a game world in a way. I'm reliving some scenes from the games that I really liked, so I don't drag myself to the gym. I'm always looking forward, a bit like if I was resuming playing a game. So yeah, I guess it played quite a big role in my results, this kind of mindset. However, it's just one way to have motivation. I wouldn't say that of course you need any of that to gain muscle, but I don't really see how it could be detrimental, except if you are really too much into it and you start to believe that you're Geralt of Rivia, then yeah, you could injure yourself or even injure other people, you know? Maybe you start to grab some bar and you believe it's a sword and you just go le 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 and you just chop heads and then you get expelled, and if you're expelled then no gains anymore. So but then you could end up in prison, and in prison people seem to get jacked, so I would put it in good. Then we have genetics. Obviously it's a big thing, it can make a huge difference in your results, all else being equal. But I think it's a bit overrated because you can have an amazing physique with a consistent training and a lifestyle to support it, even with average or bad genetics. When it comes to insertions, you can always kind of see it in both ways, right? If you have shorter insertions, you have more potential for peaks and for fast definition. It's just about mindset, because it's about seeing the advantage of what you have. And even with the shittiest insertions you can imagine, you would still look good with muscularity compared to someone without any muscle mass. So I don't think that having bad genetics when it comes to insertions is a topic really, except if you want to be a pro bodybuilder. And then also when it comes to overall potential, you may have average genetics and still have much better results than someone with amazing genetics, because you just put on the work. And so it's mostly a matter of mindset and time. Back to the topic of gamification, it's a little bit like if you play an open world. When you play such a game, you want it to be as long as possible, I think, to explore everything, to take your time, to enjoy it. And why not consider training the same way? At least that's the way I see it. I like the idea of having a challenge that's gonna last for a long time. Of course, if all you want is the looks, I can understand that it would make sense that you want it now, like so many people do. But also think about that. If you manage to have another perspective on this, bodybuilding, like other things like investing or any kind of intellectual or physical challenge, can teach you a lot of useful skills and personality traits even through the years, namely patience, discipline, perseverance, developing a taste for effort, which is gonna be a useful asset for the rest of your life. It's a little bit like the pleasure you can have with a game like Dark Souls. At the start of the game, it's a very tough one compared to most video games, but for that very reason, when you progress and you become better and better, it's very rewarding, and there is a clear sense of enjoyment. Imagine starting a video game with all the cheat codes. You have infinite health, infinite endurance, infinite mana. Where is the fun in that? There's no game anymore. You only pass your time, you feel ashamed if you have any kind of gamer's pride. So I would say that, yeah, if you think about genetics too much, except if it's in a positive way, if you manage to do some form of positive reinforcement, like I have good genetics and I'm good at building muscle, this can be a good thing, I would say. I would put it in good. But most people who obsess over genetics is gonna be rather about what they think is wrong with them, right? So in this case, I would put in NPC. It's basically gonna make you surrender before you reach any kind of advanced or intermediate level. So yeah, if you're not quite happy with your rate of progress and you are really convinced that it's about your genetics and nothing to do about how you deal with all of these 50 things I'm gonna talk about, I'm afraid you are going astray, my friend, and you are going away from main character status. Next we have giant sets and supersets. So, what's not to like about them, really? You save time, you can go beyond failure, or at least make sure you reach failure. The only way you can go wrong with it, I would say, is if you go overboard and start to make more of a cardio workout and, start to yank the weights around. But if you do it properly, I think, yeah, it's a very useful way to train. I love supersetting pec exercises with my back. So I have a push and a pull, basically. Then I superset my biceps and triceps. So yeah, if you don't know the difference, by the way, a superset is like 2 sets, and usually you train either antagonistic muscles. So typically you will not have any kind of fatigue that will lower your performance on the other muscle, or even a completely different muscle. Or it could be altogether another totally unrelated muscle, or the same muscle if you want to just go deeper into failure, or add some pump, or just train other fibers. I often do that, for instance, with dumbbell press and then machine flies. So I get my strength exercise, and just right after that I just have a pump exercise to bring some blood there and re-burn the muscle. Sometimes I even do giant sets. So giant sets is when you do more than 2 exercises, and it could be also the same muscle. I like to do that with muscles that I don't connect that well with, because then you really get a pump and you really put the muscle into a deep fatigue and you can feel the soreness. So sometimes I would do that with the pecs. Like I said now, I would do a dumbbell press, some machine fly, and then I would even add a kind of variation of a machine press, holding one handle and only pushing with the other hand. So one of my pecs is under isometric tension, basically. And after that kind of giant sets, my pecs are destroyed. I also like to do it for the lats. It's typically harder to connect with them. So before my main movers, I like to do some kind of cable work, like one hand pull downs, lat prayers with pretty low weight. So I can really feel the stretch and start to bring some blood in the muscle, activate it. And then I would go to my heavy weighted pull-up or Yates row, for instance. Also great because it's raising the intensity of your overall workout. So yeah, not much to dislike about it. I see much more advantages rather than disadvantages. So yeah, I think I will put it in good. Yeah, it's not crucial in the sense that you can definitely grow a lot with hard sets. The main advantage is gonna be the time saving aspect. But if time is a problem for you and this is the only way for you to kind of have enough volume, or let's say increase your volume to a certain level that you need for more progress, then it could actually even be crucial. But by itself, I would say no, it's good. It's always gonna be beneficial if you do it properly. Then we have goal physiques. I think it's very important to not only have a goal physique so that you can be tactical about your programming and work the muscles you do need to work for your specific goal, but also to choose a goal physique that is both very ambitious but still kind of realistic. I think looking at the bronze and silver era could really be productive. You can also look at fiction if the physique is not that unrealistic, or just in terms maybe of proportions. But it's very important, I think, to visualize what you want to reach, to check if it actually fits your morphology. And it can also be a very great source of inspiration if you find some bodybuilders who have a similar kind of morphology than you, and you can basically see what you may become thanks to bodybuilding if you put in the effort and the years to reach it. It's really kind of a North Star. You also realize that many of those greats from the past were actually wise people who just understood that resistance training was the fountain of youth. And you can see all the thoughts they have put in their training program and how long-term oriented they were. On the one hand, you can look like a Greek god, train yourself to be patient and disciplined and tremendously improve your health. And on the other hand, you have the contemporary approach of bodybuilding, which is mostly about muscle mass and leanness, and is quite all of the contrary. Most people don't find it aesthetic. It teaches you unhealthy habits and unhealthy mindsets through the use of drugs, body dysmorphia when you are off cycle, and this kind of things. So yeah, choose your goal physiques wisely. Natural bodybuilding, it's all about health, healthy mind, healthy body, and aesthetic body for the long term. So yeah, I'm tempted to put it in actually crucial, because if you don't have a goal physique whatsoever, you can respin your wheels for many years. It can make such a huge difference if you have the right goal physique in mind. Because also, once you become intermediate, you have to be strategic about so many things. Your program, of course, but also your diet. You have to know the level of leanness you want to maintain, both for your quality of life and looks. It has so many ramifications, and also it's something that is very underrated. You don't really hear anybody talk about having a goal physique at the gym. So it's a little bit like navigating on the ocean without a map. without a destination. So yeah, that's one more reason I'm very tempted, yeah, to just leave it here in Crucial, just to emphasize how important it is. Next we have Intensity. And yeah, this one I have no hesitation whatsoever. It's gonna be the first one in mandatory. Because yeah, if you don't put enough effort in your training, after your newbie gains, you just won't progress anymore. That's it. It's just that simple. There are so many things that people over focus on that I see as just part of intensity. You should not mistake the means for the goal. And as you can see, things like failure here, the drop sets, supersets, all of these things, none of them are in NPC because basically they all contribute more or less to bringing up the intensity. So how do you know if your intensity is on point? Well, there are mental and physical signs that do not lie. If you go to the gym with a sense of routine and without a form of dread or excitement or anything like that, it's already a pretty bad sign, I would say. Because if you know you're going to push yourself, you wouldn't have that feeling that it's just a day like any other and a training like any other. So that's one sign. You should see your reps going much slower when you finish your set. It should be hard for you not to start grunting. Some people don't sweat that much, but even if it's not cardio, it would be a pretty good sign as well. And intensity itself, I would say, is a kind of skill. You kind of learn how to put an effort. And with time, you learn more and more the limits of the effort you can put. So yeah, it's a whole skill. And the taste for effort is also something that you cultivate by going to the gym. Indeed, people who start the gym sometimes will feel the burn and they will just stop right away because they are afraid of something going wrong. Whereas when you're intermediate or advanced, if you get a pump, if you get sore, you're actually pretty happy. And yeah, effort becomes addictive. You kind of feel like dying on days you are not training once you are getting used to it. I think it's one of the beautiful things about starting natural bodybuilding. Intensity is basically the art of getting to know your body because it implies both mastery in the sense that if you put too much weight and fall in the trap of ego lifting and injure yourself, this is not intensity. So intensity implies mastery, but also trying to go a little bit beyond what you believe is your limit. So there is this sense of discovery of yet a new limit. It's a conqueror's mindset, and you have to go on this virgin land of the added reps or added weight. So yeah, it's a skill and an art. Next we have compounds versus isolation. Yeah, this one is gonna be pretty easy. I don't think there's a point to oppose them. They are both needed for complete physique. Just like the conversation about machines versus barbell versus dumbbell, my point of view is just do all of them. Just be aware of their best use and purpose. For example, the barbell are gonna be more suitable for overloading the weight, obviously. So it's pretty sensible to start getting proficient at them early on because you can stick to those exercises for the longest time. But like I said in the first video, if you rely too much on compounds in a kind of minimalistic approach, your physique is gonna be lacking in some areas. So you just need all of them. So I'm gonna put it in a good, meaning that using a mix of compounds and isolation and machines, dumbbells and cables and body weights or any kind of other implement is just like what I said about variation. All of these are powerful tools and you should just use all of them. If you focus too much on only one or two of them, again, you will have the law of diminishing returns. So get proficient at all of these, learn the best exercises for each of them for your build, experiment with all of these. But yeah, I don't put it in mandatory or crucial because Obviously, you could build quite a lot of muscle mass with only dumbbells or only machines, even body weight. It's just that when you have a lot of equipment like that, you can have a more complete physique easily. So that's what I put it in good. It's always gonna be beneficial to have access to the most varied amount of equipment and opportunities to have both compounds and isolations. Then we have isometric holds. And yeah, I put a plank here because it's the most obvious one we think about in terms of isometrics. But what I mean more here is implementing some form of isometric hold during your lifts. So, for example, alternating dumbbell press, where you keep one arm straight or bent with the tension on one of your pecs and only one arm is pressing. As I said before, I sometimes do that for my pecs to have a stronger mind-muscle connection and pump, but I certainly don't think it's necessary. It's just one variable you can use to increase a little bit the intensity and the mind-muscle connection and time under tension. It can be a good technique to get more out of less weight. So I would say it's more adapted for an advanced lifter. So yeah, I'm tempted to put it in depends. So yeah, depending whether you just sprinkle it here and there, that would be good. But if you start to obsess over it, it's not gonna be a good thing. And also in general, I think many lifters rely a little bit too much on isometric tension on some muscles from some lifts. So, for example, relying on the deadlift to build your erectors and your back in general. The same can be said about abs. Many variations are basically keeping the abs contracted but not bending. I will probably do a video about it because while there is definitely value in this contraction of your abs, one of their functions is to also just bend your spine, but in a flexion. Yeah, and also just even planks and things like that. Actually, I'm gonna put in NPC because I can see people at the gym doing this kind of planks like for a minute. And okay, just like any kind of physical activity, it has value, but when you've been training for years, which is the case of some lifters I see doing that at the gym, this is beginner stuff. You're not supposed to do that without some additional weight. And even with additional weight, I don't think it's the most valuable use of your time at the gym. So focusing on this, because that's the idea again of the tier list, focusing on optimizing this thing or spending more time doing this thing. Yeah, isometrics are great for other things than muscle hypertrophy, definitely, but this is an hypertrophy tier list, right? So NPC. And then to finish with this video, we have macros. And basically, it's gonna be a kind of proxy for controlling your nutrition in general. Having enough protein, having enough fats, having enough carbs, and logically then also enough calories. So it's a little bit different than what we did in the first video about calorie surplus. Here it would be the right amount of calories, eating your minimum, not to be in a deficit. So yeah, this one is gonna be the second one in mandatory actually, because for a simple reason. Let's imagine your nutrition is crap. You completely lack one of the three macronutrients, especially protein. Well, it's gonna be a problem because you need protein as the building blocks for the tissues. Your lipids are important also for hormonal reasons. You also need the carbs for recovery and basically to replenish your muscles with glycogen and lift better. So yeah, if you're on some kind of elimination diet, it's gonna be harder. And if you don't have enough of your calories, the closer you get to single digit body fat percentage, the less able you are to build muscle. And while it can seem a little bit annoying, nobody wants to live as a prisoner of counting what they eat, right? But it's actually much more simple than what people believe. If you have never done it before, all you need to do is to track your macros and your calories for, let's say, 2 weeks once in your life. and then you have a rough idea of your typical week, your typical diet. I would only track again if I was trying to cut and realizing that it's a bit harder for me to gauge how much calories I eat every day, because it's not a very precise science. The calories they put on the labels and things like that, all of that can be very inaccurate. They can be hundreds of calories off, even when you count them with an app. So that's why you have to do the work once or twice to get used to it, and then have a rough idea and be able to eat more intuitively. And once you have done it enough with most of the foods you typically eat, you just can have an idea if your day was nutritious enough to sustain your training. So that was it for part 2. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I really love this format and tier list series. Thank you for your support and for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss part 3. It will be a great one as well, with mind-muscle connection, mindset, mobility, mTOR resets, muscle fiber types, muscle memory, myoreps, nutrition timing, odd reps, and overtraining. So yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.